What is going on, guys? It is WrestleMania here, back with another video. Just before we get into the video, don't forget to like or dislike the video, subscribe, turn on notifications and leave a comment down below. The WWE has been home to thousands upon thousands of wrestlers over the last 3 decades. And with that, we've had different levels of performers, from lowly but essential enhancement talent to mighty main event players. However, what about some of those men and women in between? Here are 15 WWE wrestlers who weren't jobbers, but who you totally don't remember. Number 1. Gunner Scott. Brent Albright began making a name for himself in the WWE's developmental territory, Ohio Valley Wrestling, working a gimmick as a technical master known as Shooter Brent Albright. Albright's series with CM Punk was praised, and fans eagerly awaited his debut on the main roster. That much anticipated moment finally happened in 2006 when Albright was called up to SmackDown, debuting as Gunner Scott, a wrestler who became Chris Benoit's protege. Rumour has it, Benoit was to mentor Scott, only for him to turn heel on him, launching a feud. However, agents Dean Malenko and Fit Finlay weren't impressed, feeling Scott was too much like Benoit to stand out on his own. The WWE wrote him off by having the Great Khali attack him and stuff him in a body bag. He was sent back to OVW, but he was gone before 2006 ended. Albright turned up in Ring of Honor and the National Wrestling Alliance, eventually winning the NWA World Heavyweight Championship in 2008. He is now retired from the ring and now works at Tulsa International Airport, where he fuels jet airplanes. Number 2. Jackson Andrews. Steve Slocum had an exceptional amateur basketball career, eventually playing in 2 of Europe's professional basketball leagues. He began wrestling in Booker T's Pro Wrestling Alliance promotion, working as Cyrus, and signed with the WWE in 2009, working in their developmental territory, Florida Championship Wrestling, as Jackson Andrews. In late 2010, Andrews worked house shows, performing as enhancement talent. In December 2010, Andrews debuted on Raw as Tyson Kidd's bodyguard, but he was written off a few weeks later after being laid out by Mark Henry. Slocum returned to developmental, only to be let go because of domestic abuse charges against Rosa Mendez. His woes intensified when he was revealed he was dating Mendez and another woman at the same time. According to TMZ.com, Amber Stovall had been dating Slocum for 4.5 years and was engaged to the wrestler, before finding out of his double life. Number 3. Ted ARCIDI. Seen as a prototype to Mark Henry, he was legit known as the 80s world's strongest man, bench pressing 320 kg on the 3rd of March 1985, setting a world record in powerlifting. He joined the WWF in late 1985, facing off against other strongmen including Tony Atlas and Big John Studd. He even participated in the 20-man NFL WWF Battle Royal at WrestleMania 2. Though he never rose to the heights of Hogan, ARCIDI was never pinned on TV during his time, building up a decent win-loss record. ARCIDI was released by the WWF upon the return of former Olympic strongman Ken Patera, as Vince didn't want to confuse the audience with 2 strongmen. Before his release, he managed to get an action figure produced by LJN for the Wrestling Superstar toy line. Number 4. Tom MAGEE. Champion powerlifter Tom MAGEE took the wrestling world by storm in the mid-80s. MAGEE worked a tryout match with Bret Hart in the WWF, and it was love at first sight, with Vince McMahon's eyes bulging with dollar signs at his new prospect, signing MAGEE on the spot and proclaiming, "This is my next champion." MAGEE was hyped in WWF magazine and booked on smaller house shows to hone his skills. Unfortunately, MAGEE's skills began to deteriorate, and by most accounts, he got worse in the ring the more he wrestled. Some believe MAGEE benefited from a tryout with an exceptional worker who was able to sell for him and hide his weaknesses. Whatever the reason, MAGEE flopped, despite the WWF's fine-tuning MAGEE's character by turning him into a heel wrestler, Mega Man MAGEE, and pairing him with manager Jimmy Hart. Nothing clicked, and the man who seemed to be the next Hulk Hogan was gone from the WWF by 1990. Number 5. KRISSY VAINE. Blonde bombshell Kristen Eubanks worked as a manager and a wrestler on the independent scene before signing with the WWE in 2006. She wrestled under the name KRISSY VAINE, working in developmental territory Deep South Wrestling in a number of roles including referee, wrestler, and on-air authority figure as Deep South's general manager. In 2009, VAINE worked in Florida Championship Wrestling before debuting on the 28 September 2007 episode of SmackDown, jumping Tori Wilson after Wilson's match with Victoria. However, VAINE was gone by October 2007, claiming she had family health issues to tend to. Rumour has it, VAINE was disliked backstage by other divas. She returned to the indie scene in 2009, including time on Lucha Libre USA. Eubanks had even modelled for the Home Shopping Network, and announced recently she was expecting the birth of her first child with husband Ryan Palmiter, aka Connor of the Ascension. Number 6. Luther Reigns. Matthew Wise trained at the WCW power plant before appearing in WCW briefly as Horseshoe, a powerfully built wrestler with the nickname derived from his horseshoe-like haircut. He worked in Ultimate Pro Wrestling, then the AWA Superstars of Wrestling, but struck pay dirt when he was brought into the WWE in 2003. He worked briefly in developmental before appearing as SmackDown General Manager Kurt Angle's assistant. He eventually wrestled, forming an alliance with Kurt Angle, but creative differences with Paul Heyman led to Reigns' departure in 2005, and he hit the indie circuit before retiring in 2006. Number 7. Conan Chris Walker. Chris Walker worked in Global Wrestling Federation as a barefoot wrestler, winning the promotion's tag team title with Scott Simpson. From there, he came and went in the WWF, working mostly house shows, but popping up on Primetime Wrestling and working a dark match at the 1992 Royal Rumble. Despite an impressive physique, Walker didn't last long in the WWF, leading fans to wonder whatever happened to him. One theory is Walker was a casualty of the WWF's growing concern over roided out wrestlers, and that Walker would have found greater success if the WWF wasn't under pressure at the time. Number 8. DJ Gabriel. England's own Steve Lewington dreamed of becoming a professional wrestler. Travelling to America for a tryout, Lewington made the cut and began training as a wrestler, eventually returning home to work in All-Star Wrestling. Lewington landed some quick gigs with the WWE when they toured England, and an impressive showing led to him being signed in 2006. He debuted on the WWE reboot of ECW in 2008 as DJ Gabriel, a wrestler who liked to dance. With Alicia Fox guiding his career, Gabriel enjoyed modest success in ECW, but by 2009 he was sent back to Florida, ultimately being released in 2010. Number 9. Casey James. Best known as one half of Michelle McCool's Teacher's Pets alongside Idol Stevens, Kurt Sellers had a brief run on SmackDown in 2006 as Casey James. McCool led her team against WWE champions Paul London and Brian Kendrick, but fell short of winning the belt. After McCool was injured, the team was split up and James became enhancement talent on WWE's version of ECW. The WWE parted ways with Casey in 2008 and he returned to Puerto Rico's IWA. Number 10. Dan Rodman. In 2004, Dan Rodmere competed in WWE's Tough Enough, making it to the finals, but losing to Daniel Puder. Rodmere did get a WWE contract, and at 6'7", 300 pounds, he had the look that WWE loves. Rodmere went to work in Ojai Valley Wrestling, with the WWE planning to bring him up to Raw as team-rated RKO's enforcer. Working as Dan Rodman, the big man appeared at house shows in a losing effort against John Cena. Number 11. Eric Escobar. Puerto Rican performer Eric Perez spent several years in the WWE's developmental territories before debuting on SmackDown in fall of 2009. Working as Eric Escobar, he received a sizable push, including an on-air relationship with Vicky Guerrero. However, by January 2009, Escobar was gone from the WWE, with little idea what happened. Number 12. Mark Young. Second-generation wrestler Mark Young broke into the business the same way his famous wrestling dad, working a number of territories as he learned his craft and building up his reputation. Young started in Calgary Stampede Wrestling, then worked several years in the WWF, where his dad, Chief Jay Strongbow, achieved his greatest success. While he never achieved the same success as his father, he continued working in the early 90s, appearing in promotions such as Continental Wrestling, WCW, and All Japan Pro Wrestling. Sadly, Young passed away in 2016 at the age of 48. The cause of death unknown. Number 13. SAKODA. Ryan SAKODA established himself in Japan's NWA 01 promotion, working there as a wrestler and as a trainer for Ultimate Pro Wrestling School. SAKODA was signed to the WWE in September 2003, debuting on the main roster just a month later as one of Tajiri's henchmen on SmackDown. SAKODA teamed with Akio in the Team Kyodai, working heel alongside Tajiri. Rumor has it WWE Creative wanted to call the team the Yakuza, unaware of the real crime organization in Japan. Tajiri was wary of antagonizing the Yakuza and asked the WWE to reconsider. It became a moot matter, as SAKODA was released in October 2004, returning to the indie circuit. Number 14. Ricky Ortiz. Former NFL and CFL player Richard Young made the jump from gridiron to the squared circle, debuting on the WWE's version of ECW as Atlas Ortiz in July 2008. The charismatic wrestler changed his name to Ricky Ortiz and enjoyed a brief push with a winning streak, finally losing to Jack Swagger in December of 2008. Ortiz was drafted to SmackDown in April 2009, working as a heel. However, he was released from the WWE in August 2009 and hit the independent circuit for the next few years. In 2015, Ricky Young married former WWE diva Layla. And number 15. Mad MAXINE. Standing 6'2" tall, she had an imposing look for a wrestler, let alone a female wrestler. The journalism major met a wrestler at a party and was encouraged to try out for the squared circle. She eventually caught up with the fabulous Moolah at Moolah's South Carolina home and wrestling school. Moolah saw her potential and reached out to Vince McMahon and the WWF. She shaved her head and transformed into Mad MAXINE, a take on the popular Mad Max films of the 80s. MAXINE made an immediate impact in the WWF, with the company designing merchandise for her and scheduling her to appear in Hulk Hogan's Rock and Wrestling. At the time, however, MAXINE had no idea of the WWF's plan for her on television. In a 2016 interview, she recalled, "They had mock-ups of the cartoon character that would represent me, but Moolah never told me about it. Someone told me later." Mad MAXINE seemed to be on the way to the top with a rocket strapped to her back, but she disappeared from the WWF just after a handful of matches. Supposedly, her career was sabotaged by the fabulous Moolah, who did not like the idea of being replaced by the potential superstar and convinced the WWF MAXINE was too green to work. Mad MAXINE continued to wrestle, appearing in Florida, the AWA, and the UWF. She left wrestling after 2 years and went to work using her journalism degree, writing articles for newspapers and magazines, and making documentaries. Well guys, there you have it. 15 WWE wrestlers who weren't jobbers but you totally didn't remember. Or at least we hope you didn't. Be sure to leave your comments down below, and I'll see you next time with some more wrestling content.